how do you go from just doing it for the love of it to turning it into a career? Because I feel like that's an obstacle that many people want to overcome.
Totally. And all too real because of where we live. There seems to be very minimal pathways to get there. Um, Honestly, hard work and connections are the main two things that I always preach because literally like the conversations we've just been having, you and I feel like I had talent enough to get me into the industry, but if you don't work for it, you're going to lose your spot pretty quickly. So I just made sure that from day dot, as soon as I figured out that I loved it and I wanted to pursue it as a career, I just did what I could and worked on the things I could control, which is the hours I could train in. So I'd make sure I was always in the studio working really hard, or I was researching new things that were coming out in terms of like trending moves, or I was looking at ways that I could promote myself, whether it be in the studio or online. Um, and so that, in terms of hard work, really paid off for me because then people saw that product whenever I was in another city or in another at another event, or at like Parachute, weirdly enough, like things like that. Lol.
Parachute Festival, yeah.
Yeah, Parachute Festival. The way I had connections at that festival because I've just been like dancing and then talking to everyone else at that
Yeah.
same festival. And then, yeah, obviously leading into the fact that networking is really important. So being able to chat to different people, reach out and just put your foot out and make something of it and not be scared or insecure. Or, I mean, like, obviously you can be scared and insecure, but trying to push past that so that you can make something of the thing that you love. So hard work and connecting are the most important things I'd say to try and get into it. And then speaking a little bit probably more practically, there are agencies if you are in New Zealand and in Australia. I know there's agencies in New Zealand and Australia that specifically work with young talent to try and help them into the professional realm. So you can just look up online on Google what are the dance agencies and then send a message through, submit your info and what you do, and
Mm.
then go from there, get an agent to represent you and try and get you on the block. That's a really practical way of doing it as well.
And how do you network without being cheesy? Because I feel like it can be a
Yeah.
very awkward, like you you're kind of talking to people to get an outcome, but you don't want to come
Yes.
across like that. And maybe you don't even want to be that person, but if you
Yeah.
don't do that, if you don't have the conversation and just say, "Hey, nice to meet you. I'm Lauren. I
Yeah.
dance." If you don't do that, then maybe nothing will happen. If you do, maybe something will happen. So you need to play to those odds. What's your advice for
100%.
trying to do that in a authentic way?
Yeah, that's really true. I mean, and you literally just said it yourself. I feel like I've always lived by the whole, what is it? You won't know unless you try. Like, I think you win some, you lose some. And when you realize and embrace the fact that some will work and some don't, then it makes it easier to just approach every situation with a little bit of fearlessness and just go for it and see what happens. So that obviously always helps in approaching conversations. I think with the way that I've been brought up and the values that I have and prioritize, I will always prioritize relationship over agenda. So even if I know that someone's going to serve me in the future or that they can help me in terms of career, I'll always be super interested in them first. Like, to me, it's really important to be like, okay, I know for a fact that you do these sorts of things and that you could potentially help me out in the future, but what you do is really interesting and who you are is really interesting. So I'd actually just love to know about that first. And I feel like if you genuinely just try and build a genuine relationship, then good things come from that no matter what, or they don't, and then you've just got a cool friend. Like,
Yeah,
there's no
no
harm in,
loss.
yeah, there's no harm in that being the case as well. And at least again, you can walk away being like, at least I tried, you know. But looking at it from a perspective of being like, they're just another human being, and I'd love to probably build relationship first and foremost is the easiest way of me being authentic in a conversation. There has been times where I've genuinely had to just be like, there is no way that you and I are going to relate on any subject here, but I know for a fact I need to talk to you for the sake of this job or because it's in my contract or whatever. And it's been awkward. And then I've walked away being like, man, I just sounded like an absolute ick, but whatever. Like,
Yeah,
that's okay. Now I know. Like,
yeah, exactly. And I think it comes down to so what we were talking about before. So when I was fresh in Auckland, I moved from
yeah,
Christchurch, and I was in Auckland trying to build my personal training business. I was at the gym.
yeah,
I had to go and talk to clients to build my personal training business because
Totally.
I had no money and I had rent coming out that week with no income. And
Totally.
the income was the client. So like this is kind of like, well, maybe this isn't networking, but it kind of is within a gym. I had to
It
talk
is.
to
It is networking. Yeah.
Yeah. So my strategy to build my clients was a very, very simple one, probably
Yeah.
very average, but it worked. And all I did was introduce myself to people on the gym floor, right?
Yeah.
So I'll just say,
Yeah.
hey, my name's Brock. And they'll be like, oh, hey. And they'll be like, who are you? And I'm like, oh, I'm a new personal trainer. And sometimes they're like, okay, nice to meet you. And I was like, yeah, nice to meet you too. Bye. And then I would just leave them. And I would just
Yeah.
walk around the gym and pretend to be busy putting weights away, cleaning and stuff until I was busy enough to have clients. But
100%.
it started, like you said, relationship first and then
Yeah.
business or potential business
Yeah.
after. And I think when you come from
Yeah.
that position, it feels less slimy for the other person.
Yeah, it makes it easier to have the conversation. There's probably also practical ways for those that aren't sociable, or like I would say that I'm both extrovert and introvert. So in the right setting, I can be like firing away in conversation, but then in other settings, I'm like in the corner. But I feel like for those that are probably more introverted and don't have the like personable skills or social skills to step out and try that, there are ways that you can like, this sounds crazy, but you can script it if you're trying to specifically work on connecting. So
Yeah.
like you said, go in and be like, okay, I'm going to have 3 questions off the bat, and those 3 questions will lead me to more. Like all you need to worry about is, again, just being like, hi, my name's Loren. What's your name? And then the next question literally would be like, oh, so what do you do? Like, what are you doing here? And then all of a sudden it's away. And then you're talking about the next thing and you're talking about the next thing. And so even just having a few things that you can like go into the conversation with. So you're like, if you aren't that way inclined, you're feeling a little bit more locked and loaded with some tools in the kit.
Yeah, I had that in the gym. I had, what is your name? What are
Yeah.
you trying to achieve in the gym?
Yeah.
Do you want any help with it?
Yes.
Which
Absolutely.
is quite forward, but sometimes on the gym floor, I didn't have much time. You know, they're
Yeah.
busy, they're working out, they're like, piss off, I'm in my rest period. And, you know,
Yeah.
sometimes you have to be really bold. And this was hard for me initially, but like even going up to people on cardio machines, like, you know, while they're like walking and stuff, and you're like,
Yeah.
hey, because for me, it was like the next level of talking to people on the gym floor.
Yeah.
Because often people that are doing cardio,
Yeah.
and this is a tip for any personal trainers out there, are there because they are scared to do anything else. If they just stay there all day.
100%.
And
Yeah.
I got that tip from one of the personal trainers that I was learning from at the time, one of the mentors for the personal trainers at City Fitness
Yeah.
on Queen Street. And he was like, most of them are there not by choice, but because they feel like they have to be there because they don't know what else to do.
Totally.
So then I would come through, hey, what's your name? What are you
Yeah.
trying to achieve in the gym? Oh, you know, I want to build
Yes.
muscle and lose fat. Okay. And then I'm like, well, it's going to be quite hard to build muscle on this treadmill. Have you thought about doing this and that? Would you like
Yeah.
help with that? And then it would,
Yeah.
you know, go through that. And sometimes it would lead to, oh, okay, so, you know, do you do personal training? Maybe we can start working together. Or else I'll just
Totally.
leave them with that piece of information and then leave them later
And then
on.
it's there.
Yeah,
at
but
least.
yeah, and then maybe 1 week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, a month later, they're like, oh, that Brock guy was pretty nice. And then that's
Yeah.
kind of how I kind
He
of
was pretty buff. He looks
kind of
like he
built
knows
it.
what he's talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was it was really cool. And I think that making it basic like that, those 3 questions, or having
Yeah.
certain things in your head so you don't feel like you're fumbling over your words, which is very common at the
Totally.
start,
Yeah.
then you can actually kind of get through to people.
When I first thought of doing a podcast in 2019, I wrote down everything that I wanted to achieve with the show. And one thing I never wrote down was to spam you with ads of products that I never really used myself. However, I did write down that I wanted to grow it as big as possible and have as many interesting people on the show as I could. To help make that happen, all I ask is that you leave a review on the podcast platform that you're listening to this episode on and share it with someone that you know it will benefit. If you want to support myself even further, and more importantly, your body transformation, and are interested in having me as your coach to help you achieve the results that you just can't seem to achieve on your own, you can visit teambrockashby.com to see what program fits you best.